Yo, out here on a run in Chicago, just checking my phone, getting caught up on everything, wanted to give my 2 cents. One, we got to find ways to support open source Bitcoin developers, period. I mean, Bitcoin's got to be one of the only truly distributed, censorship resistant, decentralized software networks we have as a species today. I'd make the argument it's the biggest. It's the only distributed, censorship-resistant software network that is operating at the scale it's operating. It's worth now over $1 trillion in market cap. It is open source Bitcoin contributors that support the software, that support the network, that maintain the libraries. In my history, my decade-long history in Bitcoin, I've never heard that as a controversial take, opinion, idea, is that we have to find them no strings attached support. We don't want them supported with a bias, with a directive, with a motive. We want funding for open source contributors to build what they deem is necessary to support the project. Now, if someone builds something that you don't agree with or that you don't like, don't run it. Someone built Bitcoin Cash. I didn't update my node. Someone built Bitcoin Unlimited, Bitcoin XT, Bitcoin Gold. I didn't update my node. It's a permissionless system. People are going to build whatever they want, whenever they want, no matter what. If you don't like it, don't run the software. That's how Bitcoin works. Now, if you want developers and the network to adopt something that you're interested in and that you think the rest of the network would be interested in, then you advocate for it. You gather support for it, and we arrive at distributed consensus. Does it seem inefficient, frustrating, slow? Yes. It's the cost we bear to have the best and hardest man-made money in the history of our species. And so at the end of the day, I've never found this controversial. I'd be shocked if it was controversial. We have to find ways to support our open source community in Bitcoin. Number 2, we should never deem anyone else responsible for funding. As an individual, you don't ever have to do anything you don't want to do in Bitcoin. Now, I personally believe, as an individual, we should all feel some sense of responsibility towards helping developers get funded. Because if Bitcoin is benefiting you, if Bitcoin is helping you, if Bitcoin is part of the future of the world that you want to see, open source development in this industry is paramount. It's the nucleus. I mean, it's a software project, guys. We're running code at the end of the day. We got to find ways to maintain it and support it and ensure it has the longevity to live for centuries to come. So we should all be helpful, whether that's literal funding, education, networking, whatever that means. But if you as an individual don't want to cut the check, no problem. The second that you get in the way of other people cutting the check, now that is where I personally would draw the line. You got to let people do what they want to do in this industry, in this network, as long as they're not being malicious or there's any harmful intent. I mean, come on, I don't have to give that disclaimer. We're adults. There should be obvious lines drawn there. But for funding Bitcoin open source development, I mean, if you're getting in the way of that, if you don't want to fund it, don't fund it. No problem. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do in this open distributed network. If you're, intently getting in the way of others, now that's where I think there's rightful questioning. And then the last is doing it all in private. I've lived through the block size wars. In my opinion, we have public discourse. Yes, it is challenging. Sometimes people are offended. Again, it's the cost we bear to have a truly distributed system. There is no central planning in this network. Maybe sometimes we forget that the amount of central planning in our lives has maybe allowed us to forget just, how difficult it is for a collective species to move forward in one unified direction. It's tough. It's hard. But we got to do it out in the public. There are mailing lists, there's GitHub, there's Twitter, there's Spaces, there's Nostr, there's all sorts of ways to have public discourse on what we think the direction of this project should be. No one is bigger than Bitcoin. And so we all come with individual opinions or opinions representing a corporation, and we arrive at consensus. But we should never have closed door meetings or any threats or manipulation or anything that isn't to the public eye. I mean, it's an open source project. It is software for the collective people, and that is extremely dangerous. So my 2 cents, listen, I'm just a node on the network like everyone else. My opinion, always find ways to support open source developers. If the community now is split on that, I'd be curious as to why. If we don't find ways to support our open source engineers, I don't think Bitcoin's going to last centuries. 2, if you don't want to do something, don't do it. But if you're getting in the way of other people supporting Bitcoin developers, I'd be really curious to hear why. And 3, you gotta do it in the public. You gotta do it in the public. Closed door New York meetings, we've been through that. That was 2017. I've been through the block size wars. We're beyond that. We're better than that. Let's just do it in the public. I think we're all on the same team. If we have public discourse on what's going on, what people think the future of the network is, how developers should be funded, I guarantee and promise you we arrive at a conclusion. Sometimes it may be nasty, sometimes it may be hostile, whatever. Toughen your chin, Buttercup. We got work to do. Let's do the hard work for the best, hardest money in the history of our species. We shouldn't be afraid of that. So be public about it. It's not getting anyone else's way. If you don't want to do something, don't do it, and support open source engineers. It's my 2 cents, personally as an individual. Take it for what it's worth.